The Retcon, retroactive continuity. This is basically when a comic book company changes the history of a character or an event in order for it to make sense with whatever story they are now trying to tell. And DC Comics is quite notorious for their use of the retcon. For example, when Batman became the god of knowledge by sitting on the Mobius chair, he became able to find out the answer to any question he asked. One of the first things that he wanted to know was the true identity of his archenemy, the Joker. To his surprise, the chair informed him that the Joker was actually 3 different men. This was never really explored in main continuity, but in the Black Label story, The Three Jokers, we learn that the reason the Joker acts so different depending on the day is that Batman has been dealing with 3 different Jokers, known as the Clown, who was the Joker who took out Jason Todd, the Comedian, the Joker who shot and paralyzed Barbara Gordon, and the Criminal, who seems to be the Golden Age version of the character. The writer Jeff Johns stated that because it was so revolutionary, it would be out of canon with the option of bringing it into the main universe once fans inevitably loved it, comparing his story to Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, which went through a similar process. Now, some retcons are hard to believe, and others are both hard to believe and even harder to keep track of. For example, Hawkman, the whole character. His origins have changed many different times over the character's comic book existence. In his original 1940 origin, he is Egyptian royalty who has been reincarnated throughout time as a variety of different heroes before eventually becoming the archaeologist Carter Hall. When he was reintroduced in 1961, he was now an alien cop from the planet Thanagar named Qatar Hall, who comes to Earth and takes on the secret identity of archaeologist Carter Hall. Now, 2 years later, we learn that these 2 different versions are actually multiversal variants of each other, with the alien living on Earth 1 and the original being on Earth 2. Then, in 1986, the Crisis on Infinite Earths happens, and all the worlds are combined into one. So these 2 people were now both Hawkman at different points in history, with the original operating in the 40s and the alien operating in the 80s. Then, in 1994's Zero Hour, they make it so that these 2 are just one person. Then, in 2011, the New 52 retcons Hawkman so that he is and always has been a space cop from Thanagar. Then, in 2017, it's explained that Carter Hall was actually a pharaoh who reincarnates because the knife that he was taken out with in Egypt was made of nth metal from a Thanagarian ship. And then finally, in 2018, it's decided that he can reincarnate not just on Earth, but on different planets as well. But Hawkman isn't the only victim of multiple origin retcons. Another character who got a similar treatment is Donna Troy. The story behind Donna gets more puzzling with each retcon. Donna has been an orphan found and raised on Themyscira as Diana's younger sister, and then she was changed to a creation from part of Wonder Woman's soul, and then she even became a young mirror image clone of Wonder Woman herself. In the pre-Flashpoint era, Donna got a new origin story that completely changed the previous one every couple of decades. It was so confusing that the new Teen Titans had a story arc called Who is Donna Troy from 1988 to 89 to try and clean everything up, but even the story to clean up the character was retconned. In the end, all these separate threads of Donna finally came together, and she was revealed to be an amalgamation of all the Donna Troys across the universe thanks to a spell, with all of her origin stories being memories of her other lives. Now, in one of DC Comics' first and largest moves, the publisher removed all of the parallel Earths that they created during the Bronze, Silver, and Golden Age of comics in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. This was controversial even at the time, as it was a huge move that was meant to streamline their continuity and bring everything into one Earth. Unfortunately, the whole move was pretty pointless because it didn't take DC long to go back on that idea and retcon it, but they did it in what was honestly an incredibly odd way. We're talking comic books here, so there is a large suspension of disbelief that needs to take place, but making Superboy Prime punch reality just seems on a whole other level. Being from an alternate reality himself, he got so mad at the current state of affairs in the DC universe that he punched a hole in reality, which created the multiverse again and started the incredibly complex history of DC continuity, which only recently was reverted so that literally everything is canon if you want it to be. Now, DC's Identity Crisis was a really engaging mystery story that paid great close attention to comic book history, But unfortunately, it is another one of DC's strange retconning events that changed quite a few things that left readers completely flabbergasted. From the super unnecessary use of Dr. Light's attack on Sue Dibney, which was an example of the way women were treated in comic book stories in order to motivate the male heroes, aka fridging, to the Justice League approved mind wipes that seemed kind of evil in the grand scheme of things, there were just some really interesting choices made here. Sure, wiping Dr. Light's mind and turning him into essentially an idiot for what he did maybe seemed darkly justified, but wiping Batman's mind as well? It caused Bruce Wayne to create the Brother MK1 satellite, which eventually became Brother Eye, and created the OMAX. Catwoman also suspected that her personality shift from villain to basically a hero might not have been her own choice, and it caused the villain community to band together over the fear of being mind-wiped, leading Lex Luthor to create the Society, and it even caused the falling apart of the Justice League. But one of the most hated retcons to come out of the New 52 was that DC made it so that the Justice Society of America, a well-respected team that included popular characters from the golden age of comics, that was a huge part of DC comic book history, both in the actual continuity and real life, had just never existed. It's just such an odd choice, as the legacy aspect of DC Comics that these characters served as the basis for was just completely wiped out. That legacy concept had done so well for DC prior to the past decade, so it seemed like a strange choice to make. DC made a few weird choices with regards to the retcons created during the New 52. Some were loved, some were not, but to fans, this one seemed straight up just rude. Just because Jay Garrick and Alan Scott are old news doesn't mean that they aren't as important, because they are. But moving on from that, when Jason Todd first showed up on the scene after the Robin mantle was abandoned by Dick Grayson, it was kind of downhill from the start. DC made Jason Todd's backstory almost identical to that of Grayson himself, with Jason being part of a circus that was attacked by Killer Croc, which resulted in the passing of his parents, and that is when Batman took him under his wing and trained him to be Robin. So already, this Robin seemed to be targeted by Batman for being exactly like his beloved Dick Grayson. In a retcon, he was made to be impulsive, reckless, and rageful, probably because his mentor wanted the old Robin back. Now, his backstory was reworked to make him a tough street kid whose parents succumbed to a life of crime and substances, but that's not the worst part. After his passing at the hands of the Joker and after his resurrection as the Red Hood, Jason revealed to his sidekick that the cause of his streak of white hair was because Batman had made the young Robin dye his hair from red to black in order to make him look more like Dick Grayson and to avoid anyone asking about this new Robin's identity. And sure, that makes some sense, but it makes Batman seem like an absolutely horrible Bat Dad. But going back to the New 52 era for this next point, one of the biggest changes made to the Justice League was that Martian Manhunter was now, in the New 52, not a founding member of the team, a place that the character had held onto for years. Instead, his spot was now taken by Cyborg, who was also now created thanks to a mother box. Now this had a ripple effect of changing the important place that Cyborg held in the Teen Titans as well, and by that, I mean it was erased completely. Now I personally liked the change just a little bit. I always have felt that Cyborg has been a little underappreciated, so to make him a founding member of the Justice League felt like a huge step up for his character, who is one of my favorites. But at the same time, John Jones is also one of my favorites. It's just that his status as a newly arrived alien from Mars made it make more sense that Cyborg, who has lived a relatively normal human life on Earth, should be one of the original defenders of the planet. Now, when the DC Universe rebooted into the New 52 continuity, DC changed the continuity so that the Justice League had only been operating for 5 years, and now all the heroes are quite a bit younger. This unfortunately causes some problems, specifically for Batman and his Robins. If they had wanted to start the New 52 with Batman working solo or with Dick Grayson still being Robin, this probably would have worked, but DC wanted a younger Batman while still having characters like Nightwing and Jason Todd. Enter Retcons. Grayson and Jason Todd got away relatively unscathed, but Tim Drake got the short end of the stick. Tim was originally introduced after Jason Todd had died at the hands of the Joker. Batman was acting recklessly, and Tim deduced that Batman was Bruce Wayne, and believing that Batman needs a Robin to temper his aggression, he asked Dick Grayson to become Robin again, but ended up getting the gig himself. Well, in the New 52 canon, he never quite figured out Batman's identity and was never actually Robin. Instead, he had just always been Red Robin. And fans hated this, so much that his original origin was eventually put back into canon. But last up for today, Hal Jordan was possibly the greatest Green Lantern, according to the comics at least, but in the 90s, that kinda changed. After the death of Superman and the subsequent reign of the Supermen, Coast City, Hal Jordan's home, was destroyed. This completely changed the Lantern, and he even tried using his power ring to try and revive the city, which was against the Green Lantern's rules. When the Guardians of the Universe tried to stop him, he completely snapped. He went off the handle, ending the lives of every single Green Lantern, taking their rings in hopes of becoming so powerful that he could restart the universe and save his city. He started calling himself Parallax and was now a villain. He eventually learned the error of his ways and sacrificed